Right, so this is week 2 of 4, but really it's our first week with Their Eyes Were Watching God. And this is the lesson on perspective. So I'll introduce this concept, or really reintroduce it, take you through a model, and try to connect it to this larger question of character and narrator and how we are meant to make sense of those things. I picked Their Eyes Were Watching God because I love it. I just find it to be an extraordinarily beautiful book that is primarily about the human experience of wanting to be known and wanting to belong. But it's also done in such an artistic and creative way through Hurston's language. And Hurston was so interested herself in language. She was a PhD in anthropology. She was really interested in the way that people spoke in their cultural communities. I'd ask for you to take a moment to pause and read this bio slide I made. So go ahead and please do that. And hopefully you did that. And coming back to Hurston and what she offers this course, I think beyond the fact that she is popular in the course, the AP Lit exam uses Their Eyes Were Watching God as one of its listed suggestions for what you can write about. It's like the third most after Crime and Punishment, and I can't remember the third one. I think it's a James Joyce novel, but those are the big ones. They're the books that the AP graders think basically anything that you need to write about, you can write about with this book. So I love that for you all, that you have in your pocket right before we take the exam, this really heavy-hitting novel that is going to satisfy so many themes. So that's true. But I think for me as a 17-year-old person in St. Louis reading this book, nobody had ever quite spoken in the way I felt that Hurston was speaking to her readers. I still remember that first line where the sun had left his footprints in the sky and feeling so enchanted by the worlds that she was creating with her poetic language. So why does she speak in this way? Why does she write in this way? Of course, it's all about truth. It's all about chipping away to get to that golden center of things where Janie is trying to live. And so as you meet Janie and as you learn about how she moves through the world, I think above all you'll find her to be authentic. So she's a really good character for us to stop and think about perspective. And I'll show you why I think that, some counterpoint reasons. So this is our final novel we're going to do. I have a tracking document. I'll show you briefly what it means. This is all of the standards for the AP Lit curriculum that they have, except the 7th strand, which is just the writing strand. These are the content pieces. So the first strand is character, the second strand is setting, the third strand is structure, the fourth strand is narrator, and the fifth and the sixth strand are figurative language. And we have to go back to the big one, which is character for today. And I'm going to mix it with 4, which is the narrator strand, because when you're trying to figure out what a character is, it's hard to do that without also acknowledging the narrator. Nothing in the text matters unless it is at some point expressed through character, but by the narrator. So we're going to look at how these two things blend together in the AP curriculum. We have 2 standards to consider. They ask us to understand well how to identify and describe details, diction, or syntax that reveals a narrator's perspective. Equally, we are to identify and describe what details reveal about a character, their perspective, and their motives. So they're basically the same in so many ways. And we have done this before with Good Country People. We looked at Joy and Holga, and we considered the narrator, but we spent more time on Joy Holga. And now we're going to jump to the opposite end of character personality traits to Janie, this vivacious and charming and engaging young person who wants so much to be free of her family. Very much a foil to Joy Holga. Same strand, same consideration, but a different character. What I'm asking you to do is think about what we thought about before, motive and perspective. What is Janie's motive? What drives her to feel or act or think in the way she does, as conveyed by the narrator? And then what is her perspective? Perspective is shaped by background, history, by personality traits, and then by relationships and roles that they play. those are the components that push motive. What we're going to consider today is how can you tell what that is on the page? Without much knowledge about Janie, so far, you're only going to read through the first 4 chapters without knowing deeply everything about her. How can you determine her perspective? That's the central question. I'm just showing you, we're not going to repeat this slide, but this is the exact same slide. I copied this slide from the Good Country People unit we started the year with. So we really have come full circle back around to trying to understand who is this person, whoever this person is, and how do they see the world. So in your opinion, this is your creative analysis question. What is Janie's perspective, her worldview, and why do you believe that? Again, as conveyed by the narrator. You are seeking a perspective, that's your claim, and you'll find this through details in the language, through tone, which is your evidence. You're not going to write a formal analysis paragraph, but even your creative analysis, even your loose flowing free thinking will contain an idea or a claim and then some evidence for it. So here's how I propose we find that. What is Janie's perspective as told by our third-person narrator? Her background and her experiences lead to her perspective, which is her worldview. It is communicated through tone. Tone is conveyed through these 4 things. And if we use these 4 things to guide us today, we just have a few more tools for finding out what makes someone tick and what makes them the way that they are. They are diction, word choice, syntax, the way the sentences come together, details, specific imagery or pieces of information that come from a scene, and lastly, contradictions and inconsistencies. So as you're reading the book, I'm going to ask you to pick a single page and do these 4 things. Look for these 4 components to determine Janie's perspective, which is told by our narrator. If you do this, you know that you are engaging with the narrator and how they want to present their character, not just engaging with your own guesses or sometimes hopes for what that character could be or might be. You know you'll be living in the text, which is fair to the narrator who is controlling the story for you. And so how do you bridge these 2 standards of narrator and character? How do you make sure you're doing both justice? The answer will always be through close textual reading, and this is what we'll do today, using number 3 there. All right, lots of explanation for what is actually a relatively straightforward task. I want you to think about these things as it relates to a page from the book. I think you should pick a book or a page that is particularly beautiful, compelling, something that you just feel drawn to. So I've chosen this scene that I've copied here for you so that I'm not like holding up my book. This is a famous scene. It's the pear tree scene. And I don't mean to take it in some ways because you might want to as well, but I'm just going to focus on one really strong paragraph of diction and some ideas I have. You can interpret this scene many different ways. All right, so I'm looking for those components of diction, of syntax, of details, and lastly of inconsistencies. What am I getting from this page about Janie as told through our narrator? And I'm going to show you what I come up with here. It's sort of loose like a creative analysis can be. I would, if I were posting this, collapse it all into a single paragraph. So I find the diction is really about fertility. That's really interesting to me. The barren brown stems, the glistening leaf buds, even the word barren, that connotes fertility, and then glistening buds, that connotes something great happening, the fecundity of nature. And then even the word bloom is there, the bloom time of things growing, living, the word virginity. So there's this sensuality tied up in the fertility. It stirred her, it caressed her. So we've got a nature scene that is really about so much more than just the bee meeting the blossom. For Janie, this is about marriage. So, diction speaks that strongly. The syntax supports that too. There's short, simple sentences, sometimes just a single word. There's so many questions, the what's, the why's, the how's throughout the entire piece. And at the end, it gives way to fragments, where it's half sentences. Everything staccato as she's trying to figure out what is the answer. There's one exception, fascinating to me. At the moment the bee comes to the bloom or the flower, there's this long, beautiful run-on sentence. That is momentum carried to this climax, this climactic scene. And so the entire passage is mimetic. It's acting out, it's enacting the ideas that Janie is having about how a marriage should be a consummation. Then details. What else do we need to know? Plot details is a nice way to think about this one. Well, she's in the pear tree reverie, but then she goes to the house and she can't even sit there. She keeps moving around, and then she ends up at the gate because she has to leave this place. Or as I say, it's a tug on the gate, which of course becomes actual escape not too much longer after this. Inconsistencies, last thing, is really good to do. You're looking for the moment in the text, whether it be a poem or a passage, where something isn't quite sinking in. That's a bit of a knot to push on. And for me, I reread, I'm looking for some word, some phrase that was weird, doesn't fit, and it was the word stumbled. Everything else in the scene the word is languid. There is an ease, there's like a honey movement. Everything is really beautiful and slow and graceful. And then Janie stumbles into the house. And it marks this transition to this sort of dark and oppressive place. The hallway is narrow. Her grandma is sick in bed. She can't make any noise. So she stumbles into this place. The house literally trips her as she's trying to move into it. And she leaves. Of course she does. This is a place that does not represent for her what the pear tree did. The house is inhibiting her. She has to leave. So, perspective. What does all of this mean? And I've written this up, and you can press pause to read my paragraph, but essentially for me, the perspective I'm seeing on the page is this all about hope, eagerness, the sensuality. She wants to be a part of the making of the world, and right now she's trapped. So it's inevitable that she's going to have to get out of that trap. Good luck, enjoy, and we'll check in on each other's responses throughout the week.